Welcome, everybody, to Generationally Speaking. This is Season 3, Episode 10. Did not even look down at the paper.
You're a pro.
I know. My name's Brad. I'm lead pastor and resident boomer here. To my right here is Jordan Chitwood, one of our resident, I can't say resident, one of our millennial, staff members, because there's a gajillion of you guys.
Are you crossing your legs?
If you're... Are you going to tell him?
No. All right. So, no, every time Brad messes up the intro, he always laughs. And so, Brad's getting at that age, our resident boomer over here, he uses the restroom like 15 times every hour.
Yep.
And so because of that, I put in the intro that Brad is going to squeeze his legs so that he doesn't pee his pants tonight.
Yes.
Because there's a good chance that happens. But hey, thank you so much for joining us tonight for episode 10. We are talking about the question that really has kind of been on our hearts as a staff throughout our margin series, but then for the last year is how do people define success?
That's where you came up with. I was going to ask you how you came up with this question because I thought it was a little unusual.
Yeah, really from just Trevor's sermon when he was talking about priorities and
we
talking
have asked everybody about how do you define success.
Yes. Yep. And
it's
then
all coming full circle for me now.
And you and Bruce asked the question, how do you define success?
Yeah.
And so I was processing it because I've been thinking about that question a lot, especially since now that I have a kid of my own. And even just not just like how I define success, but what matters most to me, I think is another way of looking at it.
Yeah. For some people, that probably would be a little more clarifying.
Right. So what matters most to me? And so we're going to be talking about that. Brad and I are both going to share tonight kind of our personal thoughts on how we define success. Then we're going to look at some generational data, some data for how parents are also viewing just success from Forbes in 2016. That was the most recent source I could find. Then we're going to talk about what God says and answer any of your questions in the chat. But to get us started, let us know in the chat, how do you define success? Okay? Comment down below in the chat if you feel comfortable, and
don't give us a Sunday school answer.
Yep, don't give us, because actually how Brad and myself are going to answer, we're going to answer for us the non-Christian way that we would answer, or the non-pastoral way, and then we'll also provide kind of our Christian and pastoral side of things as well. But do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You go.
Okay, so the way I define success is I was really thinking about this from a non-Christian standpoint of view. Really, the three things that matter to me are if my family and I are happy, healthy, and I can pay my bills.
Yeah,
I've never really come from a wealthy family. My parents, so I never really had a lot of possessions, materialistic things. My parents always, bought a used car. We never had new cars. So even having nice things like that doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. What really mattered most to me is really family time, being happy, and being able to pay my bills. So what about you? What's your non-pastoral answer?
Well, and I actually wrote down the question of, is that now or previously? Because
it's changed.
I've lived a lot longer than you have.
Yeah.
And I think some of that will come out below.
Yeah.
So, I think my non-pastor is kind of the same thing as just, kind of a happiness type of thing. And for me, I think it's more, am I comfortable? Oh. And that can actually be a problem.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
I think so too. Yeah. So, I think that comes back
That's
to
actually really good. I never thought about it like that.
The generational thing is, because that's what we grew up is
sure.
a comfortable thing. So anyway, but
we'll talk. And you came from out of the generation of where nothing was consistent, and it was, you got the wars, you got the financial crisis, the economy crisis, and so. Yeah, you don't think that played a role in wanting to pursue comfortability?
but it's much broader than that, because I would say that we went through in my generation a lot of ups and downs. I mean, there were some very good times, there were some very bad times, there were some very good times.
Sure.
But I think that the emphasis always was, the American dream, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So, So your pastoral answer?
My pastoral answer, and I was thinking about this today on my way into work. It's been an emotionally exhaustive week just for me. And I was really just thinking, the only thing...
It's only Wednesday.
I know. I decided to release a stinking book on D Now Week, and so I've just been emotionally exhausted.
I get mine today, by the way.
Did you?
Yeah, it hasn't been yet. It's supposed to be delivered
Is it supposed to come at the same time as your couch?
Yeah, probably.
I'll share... How about How about let's actually wait for the pastoral answers because we've got 5 comments to read.
Let's go
Then
through
we'll
some
do
of
our
those.
pastoral comments.
Yeah.
Susan Key says that part of the way she defines success is to accomplish a goal. Like you see success in just the different achievements, whatnot. Have you been like in your life? Are you a goal person?
I am not.
Oh, really?
No.
Like, have you never been?
No. And I think part of that is just a personality thing. My guess is that Susan is probably in the disc profile, a high C.
Sure.
Which,
I would assume so.
I would say, Trevor, what would you say to that for yourself?
Have I ever set a goal?
Yeah. Is part of success accomplishing a goal?
I'm not sure I've ever set a goal.
See, exactly.
Trevor said he's never set a goal in his life.
Is a very high I, very relational person, as am I, and it's just not the way we operate.
Yeah.
So accomplishing
for
a goal.
a C person, which would be more analytical,
exactly. So I would say
task-oriented.
So see, some of this is going to be compared to what your personality type is too.
Sure.
And how you're wired.
Yep. Kevin Saylor says being able to take care of yourself, pay your bills, and be happy in whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's kind of how I answered mine, and then you even answered a little bit with comfortability.
Right.
Michaela said, unfortunately, without Jesus, I think a lot of my success is defined by other people, their expectations, and their opinions. Yes.
That's a great observation.
Yep. And I think...
And just understanding that, knowing that that's, is huge.
I think that's a lot and that's where mental health plays a role in it too, is that especially these younger generations or the next generations, millennial, Gen Z, and then after, doing things for other people.
To me, this is where it gets fascinating because as I read through some of the notes and things like that and started thinking about it, there is a lot of generationally differences in when it comes to this.
Yes, and actually, what's really fascinating is a lot of that started to shift from Gen X.
Yeah.
And then millennials actually related more to boomers than millennials related to Gen X. When it came to, it was fascinating. Gen X, pretty much, when I was looking at the data, 9 out of 10 of them are in a lot of debt. And so for them, success was defined as being able to pay off your debt.
Wow.
Which was really fascinating.
Susan Keys said, I never used to set goals that way. I couldn't fail.
Oh,
that's big.
That's another big one for, of the fear of being bold, or even can go with the comfortability of living. I'm just going to live a safe life. Chelsea Terry says, getting through each day at peace.
Yeah.
Yep. I relate to that one.
And that's coming from someone who just had a baby.
Yes.
And so it's just that, can I get through this
She's
day?
got 4 kids in the house, including Josh.
Wow.
And so, so now let's share our pastoral response.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, today when I was thinking about this, it's been an exhausting week, and we've got an exhausting weekend coming up. And I was thinking, really, the only thing that matters to me most is that people know Jesus and know the love of Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, I think if I have the privilege of living a long, healthy life, and I get to the end of my life, kind of like how Billy Graham did, and we talked about in this Margin series, how Billy Graham kind of just reflected on his life.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm sitting in my little sofa with 2 days left to live, just thinking back to anything I would do differently, I really hope that everything I'm doing now and the way I'm living, the way I'm loving, the way I'm teaching, writing, sharing, serving is going to point people to Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's my response for success.
Yeah, and I love that for you because you're so young and doing that, and I look at, even all, Trevor and you and even our younger staff and things is that you guys are so much farther ahead than what, like myself, ever was in that. And I just, the impact that you guys can make over a long period of time. Sure. It's just like saving money over a long period of time. It just compounds. But it's just really cool stuff. And my answer is kind of the same way. And I kind of answered this 2 ways. There's one for myself, and I just wrote down here, seeing and trusting Jesus for who he actually is. And part of that comes from actually a deconstruction of faith and rebuilding
which
faith.
We had talked about, I think, in episode 6,
exactly,
#ad.
I mean, knowing and understanding more and more of who Jesus really was. And then the same thing is just, I love being able to help people see Jesus maybe for the first time and or in a different way that impacts their lives, and they center their lives on him. And to me, that's success.
It's really cool when you see someone who you've been walking with for a while, and even if at the beginning of the journey that you walked with them and they've already had a relationship with Christ, as they mature, how their view of success or what matters most changes.
And they get more and more surrendered. That is unbelievable.
Exactly.
And light bulbs keep coming on. Exactly. Oh, about this and this and this, and that's really cool.
Brad Steenport said, "Sorry I was late. Had to find my red hoodie." He's one of my favorite human beings.
You know why he says that?
No.
Because we have a tendency to dress alike.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, like the last two
That's
times we've been at
hilarious.
church, we've worn almost the same shirt. So that's what he was doing. Yeah,
That's great.
He's a funny guy.
Yep. Well, hey, Brad, how about you walk us through some of the generational data? It's
Yeah.
not like statistical data. It's just some things that I found fascinating when I was researching for the different generations, and then, chime in as well for, your generation, some things you see.
Yeah. Boomers viewed success under the 1, 2, 3, 4 model.
Did you know?
I did not.
Does it make sense?
Well, yeah.
Okay, so
And
why don't you share what that model
Is
is?
this supposed to be in order?
What do you mean?
The number one thing is the number one thing. The second thing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's like 1 that, 2 this, 3 that. Yeah,
right.
yeah. So just walk.
So the first number 1 would be spouse. Number 2, children. Number 3, room flat, which I'm assuming is house.
Yep.
Okay. And then 4 is wheels, cars.
Yep.
Focused on the American dream and retirement.
Yep.
And I wouldn't necessarily agree for myself with 1, 2 in that order, but I would agree with every one of those.
No. I think you misheard me.
Okay.
They were saying their view of success is that they only have 1 spouse, that they have 2 children, a 3-room flat, and a 4-wheel drive. So that it was just the 1, 2, 3, 4 model, and I didn't know if that was true or not. It was just something I found fascinating. Is it really that?
Yes, it is.
Because we had
Yeah, that's very accurate.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was fascinating that that was the idea, and then it goes on to say that they focus a lot on the American dream.
Well, and you think about this, I mean, the average age when we got married, I mean, if you were 22 years old, not married, you were doomed.
we were talking about that when we were talking about divorce, marriage, and relationships.
You were doomed.
Where now it's 28 to 33
If you
is
got
the average marriage
if
age.
you got to 28 or 29, you were a spinster. I mean, you were not getting married. I mean, that's just the way it was.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Trevor shared in the chat, his pastoral goal is to help teens have real experiences with God. I think if teens have real experiences, even if they walk away, they'll know where to turn.
That's awesome.
And that's something he shares like every year with, especially like as he is kicking off the year with his leaders and whatnot for another small group session.
Yeah.
That's been him consistent for the last decade, is that's what matters most to him. So that's been really cool.
And that's the cool thing is in this is understanding generations of things.
Yep.
It's so crucial so that you know how to deal with them and prepare them,
Yep.
And I think that's brilliant. So
Michaela wanted to let us know that she is 0 for 4 with the boomer model. She does not have 1 spouse, 2 children, 3-room flat, or a 4-wheel drive.
yeah, well, there you go. There you go.
Here was another thing that was fascinating. Boomers were more retirement focused. Do you see that as being true? Like focusing on like saving and what
from the very beginning.
from like a financial standpoint. Not you, because you're not the average boomer when it comes to your money.
I am not the average boomer when it comes to my money, but I'm sure interested in it now.
Yeah,
but I would say yes. I
it.
think that is the case.
Is it?
Yeah, and I think probably when they did the survey, when they're talking to boomers, because they were still older, even when they did the survey.
Yeah, well, this was back in 2016.
They probably answered, "Yeah, we're concerned about retirement even now."
Sure,
and
sure.
and they would have been. So
Sure.
yes.
All right, let's move on. So we already talked a little bit about Gen X. Gen X, when I was looking up the data, is the biggest thing that meant the most to them for defining success was that they could get out of debt.
Really?
Because 9 out of 10 Gen Xers are in debt.
And you know what's interesting? 2 things about that is that, and we've talked about this before also, is that like when I graduated high school in 1977, okay, and I would say about half of my classmates went to college.
Okay.
Or university, or whatever you want to call it. That maybe it might be a little bit more. I'm just taking a random stab, but
Sure.
not everybody
Sure.
went to college. Okay, and colleges, as I recall, were $5,000 a year or something at that point.
Yeah, like our community colleges now.
You moved to Gen X, who it got to the point that college degree was everything.
Yep.
You had to go to college, and it was
That's
probably
part of what they were talking about. They had a 70%. They said for most schools, 70% of Gen Xers went to school.
see. I thought it would be higher than that.
It could be.
So my
this
guess
was just
is that
from the
then,
one
if
chart.
that's the case, then I bet boomers were even lower than that. With lower than 50%.
Yeah, it very well could have been a lot more than 70%. Either way, because of the school.
But here, you look at that. That's what I'm saying. The generation thing in this is so huge because it's changed from generation to generation.
Yep.
School was a lot more expensive for Gen Xers.
Yep.
And now then we go to the millennials. You guys
even more expensive.
are screwed.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
Yep.
Because everybody goes to school no matter what.
Yep.
And a lot of people, going with degrees that I would say, how many jobs are out there in those degrees.
Right. Well, not just that, but then you like so many jobs that are more, specialized, require master's level experience or doctorate. So then you're going to school.
So now you're 6 figures in debt.
Right.
And you get out and get a job that's $30,000.
Yep. Because you want that specialized degree for
Yeah.
the specialized job, paying $100,000 in debt, and you're only going to make $40,000 as a digital
insane.
designer. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
Susan Key said Gen X raised on greed is good. Lots of excess stuff equals success.
Yeah.
So would they be like the hoarder generation? Or, do you think?
I
don't know I just don't know what you mean by lots of excess.
don't know either.
So Susan, share if that's kind of what you meant, like hoarding things or
Or
always wanting the next big thing or something like that.
Probably the newest, greatest, biggest thing.
Right.
Because I would say some boomers would, they stayed at their jobs forever. They lived in the same house forever.
Yeah,
Again, I
yeah,
was
yeah.
not one of those people.
Gotcha, yeah.
But yeah.
Gotcha. So millennials, here's what was interesting to me. And so millennials view success, and we've already talked about this, as having a job that had some meaning,
Yep.
not just paid the bills, but there
Right.
was purpose in your job.
Right.
There was flexibility, and this went with along of flexible hours, remote working, and this was back in 2016.
Right.
Before
So you can imagine what it is now.
Right. With remote work, but then also the opportunities to work in their passions, which again come with the meaning. And then one thing that I found fascinating was opposed to focusing on retirement and putting away savings, 401k, millennials are more now focused.
Right.
So short-term success or short-term pleasure. And then, you know what? If I worked at this job for a year and a half and I get tired of it, I'm going to move on.
You see, and again, that is so opposite of
Right.
what my generation would have been. It
Right.
was, but I mean, we would stay at a job. The thought was, I'm going to stay at this job for 30 years. I'm going to retire from it. I've got a pension.
Yep.
And here's the difference: is those pensions don't exist anymore. And you even think about Social Security. I
And
mean,
that's-
the
yeah,
chances
that-
of you guys having Social Security, who knows what's gonna happen.
Right.
So,
Hey, put in
it's
the
a
chat-
different, it's a different idea.
Absolutely. Put in the chat how many jobs, whether you're Gen Z, a millennial, Gen X, boomer, if you're in the chat watching with us now, how many jobs have you had in that you would call either a career, or if you are more Gen Z, like even a part-time job? Put in the chat how many jobs, because I would just be interested
It
to
would
see.
be interesting to see.
Because so I worked at Pizza Hut, and then I worked at Bonzo's Funhouse in Anderson.
I remember that.
And then Anderson University Science Department, I worked those two jobs. But then really but those were all part-time jobs, so I'll
Right.
pay the bills. I've been at Crossbridge for
Right.
a little over 3 years.
Yeah.
So this is my one career that I've had.
yeah.
But I know that's not the case for, a lot of viewers. Trevor's had one job after college, which again, he landed the jackpot because, Crossbridge is pretty, lenient on his, on him. It is fascinating though that we've had a youth pastor for 12 years.
It is, and part of it is we're all skewed because we're in ministry, because
Right.
it's a little different scenario than
Right.
what I think the average person having a real job, because
Yeah.
we don't have real jobs.
Yeah, we just
you
we get to hang out with kids.
Yeah.
Well, you don't. You don't.
No, I try not to hang out with kids.
Susan Key says 2 after college. Susan, you're young Gen X, right? She's young Gen X.
I don't know. I'm not going to ask her how old she is.
Yeah.
I
So
refuse.
my friend Devin, who graduated in my class, has had 5 jobs,
And
which again makes sense.
And what you can again are those jobs of not just part time to get by in his actual field or what?
Right. Yeah. I think so. He's in the Air Force. So yeah, Devin, just let me know in the chat. Kevin Saylor says 2 career type jobs and then a few part-time jobs sprinkled in. Ryan Robinson, 2 different jobs since 97, 18 years at current job. So that's, Ryan Robinson, I think, is another younger Gen X. Jenna Biendorf, detasseling summer job, dog kennel 6 years, Menards 2 years, dog kennel 6 years, Life Touch call center 1 year, Epson almost a year, LabCorp 1 year so far. So even really in that, since I've known you, Jenna, were you working at Menards last?
See, the other thing
3 years,
that's interesting is,
3 jobs.
and maybe this is going into Gen Z too, is I've always been amazed at how little people work through high school.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Every
now
friend
there's
I
no
had,
time for it.
We when we hit 16, we were driving to our
Yep.
jobs.
That's what, as soon as I turned 15 and a half and Pizza Hut allowed.
And you were a rare
allocation.
one.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Nowadays, it's so rare because you're in sports year round.
Right.
You're in hobbies year round.
Yeah.
And there are still a lot of students that I know once they get to senior, junior, and college becomes a little bit more on their minds of paying for that,
Yeah.
then they start having those jobs. Michaela says, I haven't started a career yet, but I would definitely say that my perception going in is that I will have a handful of jobs over my lifetime. Yeah. Yeah, and that is something that is very common for the younger generations.
Right.
And that's part of the then focused versus now focused and
Right.
whatnot. So for Gen Z, I actually didn't do any research. I just asked our youth pastor, the most qualified person to answer this because he works with Gen Z. How does he, and this is kind of something he's been thinking about, and we've been, what our margin series was about is
Right.
how do Gen Z view success, the younger generation. Trevor said this, and I thought it was really cool. Success is on capitalizing on the short-term opportunities, or so just making the most, and so much so that like not feeling like you can say no to anything because you don't want to miss out, or you don't want, like if you say no to this spring soccer season or this time with your friends or whatnot, you might not be able to play A, B, C, or D, whatnot. So that was one of them. Taking advantage of everything thrown at them. Then the biggest one, it was actually the first thing he said, was getting into a great school, like getting into college. Even as freshmen, like in 8th graders, are thinking about that.
Really?
If you're thinking like middle school, I think, Trev, weren't we talking with our middle schoolers and they were already doing, 6th grader, and they were already doing like PSAT testing.
And you
for
wonder
middle
why the
schoolers?
anxiety is through the roof?
Right.
We had a 6th grader ask us which college he should go to.
Yeah, Trevor just said we had a 6th grader ask us which college they should go to as a 6th grader.
Can we just stop it?
Right.
I mean, it just does. Yeah.
Yeah. So Devin answered he has had 2 career jobs, engineer and Air Force, 1 in high school, still had to pay for stuff, 2 part-time, didn't last long. So 2 career jobs, engineering and Air Force, and whatnot. Bob Key says 5 jobs since 1987, which still, that's what, 39 years or 35 years. That's still 5 jobs in 35. That's 7 years a job. That's still pretty
It's
good.
still- but I think that's starting to show that even that generation, things were starting to break down of you just didn't stay at a job.
Sure.
At,
Yeah, so my
25,
grandpa-
30, 25 and out.
My grandpa worked at GM for really the majority of his career, and that's what he got his pension and
My
401k
dad had one career.
Yeah, I
growing-
think that was him. Bob says he's 19 in his current job, so 19 years in his last current job. So 4 jobs in in a 12-year span, and then 19 in the last one.
So moving up and yeah.
Okay, and so then this was also one that I added for the Gen Z. I think Gen Z also boasts themselves on being inclusive of everything.
Yes.
People,
Yeah.
jobs, being
That's-
open-minded
yeah.
and whatnot. And so
Which is cool.
success is just like saying, hey, we're going to break.
And here's the interesting
the
thing,
norm.
and from what I have read I've been doing a lot of research or trying to with Barna, with Gen Z and what have you, and the pendulum is actually swinging back a little bit.
Yep.
Where millennials were not so focused on material things and what have you, where Gen Z is a little bit more of that.
Yep.
Well, the material things are a little more important to them than what it was for millennials.
You'll even see the way they dress, the way they
Yes.
look, the way they act. The designer stuff is
Yep.
coming back.
Yep.
The shoes,
Yeah.
all of that. For me, like you're seeing what I'm dressed in now.
Yeah.
I've got a sweatshirt, flat bill hat that's 15 years old, and jogger pants. Like I couldn't care less. And my outfits drive you crazy all the time because I'm never matching.
You don't match.
Right.
Drives
And
me
so
nuts.
I only try to match on Sunday mornings. The rest of the time I'll wear orange shoes, red shoes with,
These
shirts.
next 2 points I think are phenomenal.
Yeah, how we define success
Success.
from a parent's.
Parents often view success through the lens of their children's success.
How many I want you to guess. When I typed in this question in Google, how do parents define success? Didn't even mention teen or child. How many articles do you think the headline included their
With your
child?
children. A lot.
Every single one on the front page.
Yeah.
I had to go to the next page before I found anything even remotely close to just a parent.
And this stat is, to me, is very, very sad.
Yep.
It's something. It means that your identity is in the wrong place to me. Now, and there's nothing wrong with wanting wanting to watch your kids, what have you. But when your whole life evolves around your kids,
Viewing success through the lens of your child.
exactly that my worth is because of what my child either does in grades wise and or sports wise or whatever it is, and then you wonder why anxiety and suicidal thoughts and everything is because I'm telling you that your kids can feel that pressure that they think that if they don't succeed, if they don't measure up, they are letting you down.
And I would even say, like, I think the concept of this extends to just seeing their children being capable of participating gets them excited. Not even like that they have to be an all-star or a starter, but just the fact that my kid is on the JV team on the bench. You know, like that drives them, that drives people like, so like that's success for a parent just because their child was capable of participating in everything or in so many different things. Me and Trevor were talking about this today, is that when we were looking at the, specifically just the parents, and for this weekend, like asking him the question, priorities for your parents and whatnot. One of the things we're going to leave with the children is saying, hey, have a conversation with your parent about the priorities you set together.
Yeah.
And their, again, standards for you, but then also your standards for your parents. Like, what do you want your parent in the crowd screaming at your games? Like, do you enjoy that? Right. Most of them don't.
Yeah. I actually read an article this week, and I was going to actually send it to you, and it talked about how it was a gentleman who has now grown. He's through sports and what have you, and said, my dad was not at every game. He said every game he could be, but he said, I had the perspective that his world did not revolve around me. And I'm thinking, if I would have shared that article, I probably would have got a lot of pushback on a lot of people, because what, we've got to be at every game, we've got to be at everything. And what you're showing your kids is that the most important thing is sports, academics, whatever it is. And again, there's a balance there. You
got to find the balance.
You got to find the balance.
It's about celebrating their lives without finding success or being filled up by what your child does or doesn't do.
Exactly.
And actually, Brad Steamport just shared something really cool. It's a lot of pressure for a kid to be responsible for their parents' emotions.
Wow.
Doesn't that just hit you like a truck? Me and Trev were talking about this again today, and when we were looking at this weekend, and he had said that what breaks his heart is that when then young adults end up going off to school.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they start asking the question, well, now what?
Right.
Like, that's when the anxiety comes in, the depression comes in, because they don't know how to socialize. They don't know how to have healthy priorities.
Right.
Because everything has been through the lens of either their parents or through the lens of staying busy or through the lens of A, B, C,
and
or
the
D.
parents are managing their schedules.
Oh, yeah. And then the parents end up asking the question, well, why isn't my kid around? What happened?
Yeah.
Or why is my kid in church? What happened? Or why is my kid talking about suicide? What happened? They were always happy.
Yeah.
Were they?
Yeah.
Because we're pulling from 13 middle school boys and high school boys. Well, when we ask them, like, are you genuinely happy in your sports, in your hobbies, or do you feel like you are under a lot of pressure? Not a single one said that they were genuinely happy.
Yeah.
That it was pressure.
It's just it's no longer fun.
Nope.
And we see that and see through sports even. I mean, as young as kindergarten and pre-K, first, second grade. I mean, it's these parents
even
are
just
crazy.
some of the coaches for kindergarten flag football or basketball. Just how they treat the refs, how they treat the environment.
Can they just have fun?
Right. It's almost like having fun has come at the
and again,
expense.
success for their kids is they've got to be better than everybody else on their team, and that's why it feels like as Trevor said in that first sermon, is that's why they feel like they're in competition with all of their teammates.
It's so good.
I would rather them start understanding teamwork than being better than anybody else on the team.
Really, just any of those values.
That's what's going to carry in their life is being able to be a good teammate.
Yeah, because if you think about it, not just again like my mom and I talked, 99.9% of college athletes do not go professional.
Right.
Division I college athletes.
Division I.
Okay? High school, it's like, what percentage of that? It's like 0.0001% go to Division I schools.
Right.
And compete. And then out of those, 99.1 or 99.9% don't go pro.
Right.
So at the end of the day, and even professional athletes then, even though it's a business, still have to find joy in their lives.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, if you can't let your kindergartner have fun.
Yeah, but here's the thing is that almost everybody is going, well,
we are, but we have 14 viewers right now. I mean, we've consistently been at 14.
Here's what your kids are going to do.
Yeah.
They're probably going to get married.
Yep.
They're probably going to have children.
Yep.
They're probably going to, they're probably going to have a job.
Yep.
Why don't we prepare them for that? Then the 0.0000001% that they're going to play sports for the rest of their lives. There's a 90 whatever percent chance that they're going to do all these other things. Let's prepare them for life before we prepare them for something that probably is not going to happen.
And does your kid even want to do some of those things? Like, does your kid want to be in year-round soccer? Like, have you asked your kid genuinely, not just like, what's what my friends do?
And there's two sides of this, because there are some kids, and I'm thinking one in my
Yes.
family right now,
Yes.
that the parent would say, "Oh, but he just loves it."
Yes.
Yes, he does love that. But you know what? What's good for him is not playing and getting some rest and being able to play in the backyard and go get muddy.
Yep.
You know,
This is another thing that Trevor and I talked about for D-Now this weekend is it's okay. It is okay to step in as parents and set those healthy boundaries.
Absolutely.
Actually, in fact, it's not just okay. I think it's required.
It's mandatory.
It needs to happen.
It has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Susan Keys started the hashtag Brad2024. Okay, here's one other thing for the generational data regarding parents. This is also going to be a little bit touchy, okay? Parents are too protective of their child's lives, which damages their child's ability to thrive.
Yep.
And that's what happens. That's what you see happens when they go off to college and they either start struggling with their classes or their homework or keeping a job, wanting to work.
They have no responsibilities.
No responsibility.
You know, they don't know how to set a schedule themselves. They don't know anything about finances because they haven't had to deal with
How
it.
bills work.
How exactly?
Like when you go off to live on your own, for the first time you realize, wait, utilities are 3 separate companies or
Yeah.
4, depending on how many you
Yeah.
have. They don't. Why don't they just all combine them?
Way back in high school. I mean, this is back in the old days when we had lanterns, in the classroom. So, but I can remember. I mean, I took all college prep courses. What you would call AP courses. You
Yep,
didn't
yep.
have that name back then, but anyway, all college prep courses. I mean, I was so burnt out by the time. That's one of the reasons I didn't go to college. I was so burnt out by the time I was a senior. I took a throwaway class, one of those that taught you how to balance a checkbook and do money things. It was
Yeah.
one of those. It was the best class I could have ever taken. It taught me more about finances and setting up and things. I thought
Than geometry?
yeah,
Then what an octagon?
I use algebra 2 and trig all the time now.
I bet you do. I bet you do. And I think especially with what we're learning about education and school and whatnot, it would be so important for us to get back to some of those things that they're going to learn, not just like having it. We're not even going to get on that topic.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's how we want to.
But here's
transition.
one thing that Bruce and I didn't get to when we were doing the talk on margin is, and he said this a long time ago, and it just rang so true for me. He said, "My job for my kids is to prepare them
Yes.
to leave.
Yes.
My job is to prepare them to leave."
That's good.
So that when they walk out of the house, they can sustain themselves and live in the world. And I believe we are not doing a very good job of that.
Yep.
So
And the shift happened, I think, again, when the concept of having our lives like this and where it was all about control, and me, and whatnot, and protect for our child, for our family, for our friends. And it really it's what my mom and I talked about. It comes down to fear.
and we don't let our kids fail.
Right. Oh, that was another thing I saw today.
We are always there with the safety net, and if
Yep.
they forget their homework, you know what? I deliver their homework, I deliver their lunch. You know what? The kid's gonna go hungry for lunch if they've got his lunch bag. Sorry.
And that's part of it too, is not even just with like school stuff, but like going through different situations. Like if your son or daughter lies about something. We were talking about this, in the car. We have one of our, my mother-in-law, who's an educator, has a parent who will defend their child left and right, no matter how in the wrong the child is. And Trevor's talked about this, Courtney's frustration too, of where you'll have the parent will defend their child. Yes, they lied about A, B, C, and D, or yes, they've been misbehaving, or yes, they haven't done their homework.
And here's why.
Right. Well, not even just that, but like, you're not allowed to treat them that way.
In my day, if the teacher called home
back in your day,
oh my
those
gosh,
things are illegal. What you did back in your day,
my parents, it was
right, but
it was bad. It was bad enough.
Even from like a teacher standpoint, then you got home and your parents dealt with it.
Yeah,
and
they
it.
sided with the teacher.
Right. And now, again, you need to have the balance where you celebrate and defend your child. There needs to be that balance.
Absolutely.
But then there also needs to be the balance of accountability.
Yep.
And this is any age, a respect level of saying, you know what, I care about my kids so much that, like you said, I'm preparing them to leave.
Yep.
I'm preparing them for growth, for thriving, like all that fun stuff. So, hey, here's how we want to transition to end tonight is we want to share, how does God view success? Okay. I found this fascinating. I did not fact check this too much. Okay. But I found it fascinating. The word success is only used once throughout the entire Bible. Okay.
Yeah, I read that, I was kind of shocked about that.
Yeah,
I didn't research it either.
I didn't fact check. I fact checked it a little bit.
Yeah.
Where I looked at the top 25 verses that talked about success. This is the only one that showed up. Took this from a blog, 2021. Not sure if that's true or not. Don't quote me on it. But here's the verse that the word success actually comes from. It's Joshua 1:8. It says this: keep this book of the law, or this Bible, always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. And so, Brad, what is success for God?
Staying in the guardrails.
Yep.
And we are going to talk about that this Sunday.
Perfect.
That's exactly what I'm going to be preaching on this Sunday.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And so as you're thinking about it, as we're closing, what it looks like from God's point of view, I think it can be so important for us to just say, you know what, God, I'm yours.
Yeah.
You know, I submit to you. I'm obedient to you. I'm honoring the life you've given
And
me.
trusting that he has it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And it's hard to do.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the word boldness, when I was, again, thinking about success for me today, I want people to know Jesus and know the love of Jesus. While I was thinking about, okay, well, what if I added a third one? I want people to be bold.
Yeah.
Like, I want people to take risks.
Yeah.
We've become such a safe people.
Comfortable.
Just not just from COVID, because it was before COVID too, but COVID then,
Accelerated
escalated things.
Yeah.
But really, every generation has gotten this way in our day and age today of comfortable living, safe living, and God wants us to be bold. So, hey, thank you so much for joining us. 14 people all the way through.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
What a great conversation. Thanks for all of you who were commenting throughout the chat, whether you're watching live with us or later on the podcast on Spotify or Apple Music. Let us know your thoughts throughout the video as you watch. Thanks for joining us. We will be back live next Thursday, and here's what we're going to be talking about. You ready?
I can't wait.
Verses out of context.
Really?
Yep. And so it's not going to be one where we're going to pull some generational data.
Yeah.
What I'm going to look at is we're going to say, hey, what verse kind of was really popular in your generation and then even in my generation.
Yeah.
And this came from one of our interns, Michaela, who is in the chat right
Awesome.
now. So we're going to talk about some of the most out of context taken verses next Thursday. Thanks for joining us for season 3, episode 10. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.